thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. I'm Christina Park with Amplify, and we are here for our weekly legislative update. To get us started, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors who make this all possible. We want to thank the City of Clearwater, Clearwater Gas System, Duke Energy, Hillward Henderson, Morton Plant Hospital and the Baycare Health System, and Charter Spectrum Communications for sponsoring this legislative update and making this possible. Exciting, another week down, budgets are out. So with no further ado, Anita, I'll turn it over to you and share those updates with us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Christina. And yes, another week down. We're now more than halfway through. Wednesday was the halfway point of our 60-day legislative session. So we've now wrapped up week 5, leaving 4 more weeks to go. Like Christina said, the House and the Senate both released the full text of their proposed budgets. The House released theirs yesterday. The Senate followed yesterday evening. They have passed their respective budget proposals out of each of their full appropriations committees. And we'll be voting on those budget proposals on the floor next week, which will set us up for budget conference. I expect budget conference will likely not start until at the earliest week 7. It kind of depends on how well the House and the Senate are getting along and how quickly they can decide on allocations for each budget silo. So we'll definitely be keeping you all updated on that. But so far the budget seems to be moving along pretty smoothly at this point. As far as policy goes, the Senate passed their telehealth bill off of the floor. It was expected to be on the floor in the House this past week, but it was temporarily postponed. As we've discussed previously, there's differences between the House and the Senate bill, with the Senate including an allowance for audio-only telehealth services. Since that bill was postponed on the House, an amendment has been filed that would remove the audio-only portion, leaving just the expansion related to controlled substance prescribing. So I think that the House is probably going to send that back over to the Senate, but definitely keeping an eye on it. Of course, expanding telehealth services in any way is going to be important, particularly from the pandemic and making sure that everyone has access to healthcare services. The House and the Senate did officially pass their extension of COVID-19 liability protections for healthcare facilities and providers. It's now ready for the governor to sign, and we do expect that the governor will sign that extension. So great news for our healthcare providers who deserve to have those protections in place for all the work and the services that they're providing during this pandemic. One big issue kind of going on between the House and the Senate right now is there are bills in both chambers that address the Medicaid managed care system. The Medicaid managed care plans will be going out for reprocurement very likely later this year. So the Agency for Healthcare Administration has legislation in both chambers to make some tweaks to that system before that reprocurement goes out. The House bill did move through its second committee this week. Not a ton of major changes going on, although it does reduce the number of regions the state is divided into for services. So that's going to have a little bit of change in regards to what plans are available for Medicaid members in each region. Something though that is going on, there are like a handful of issues that are different in the House and the Senate bill and that are kind of being decided on at the very top levels of leadership. One issue that's in the House bill that would require the hospitals to have contracts in place with health plans in order to receive their supplemental funding. So definitely could have an impact on our hospitals that receive low income pool funding, that receive disproportionate payment program funding. That language is not in the Senate bill, but definitely a big concern for many of our hospitals as far as the the House bill goes. The House bill also changes how dental services are contracted. So another big food fight issue. So a lot to be resolved in that, but it's something that we're definitely very closely, monitoring, especially for our hospitals, to make sure that they're going to have access to those supplemental funds. The House and Senate yesterday evening sent a bill to the governor, our first bill going to the governor for his signature. It creates an emergency management fund that the governor could use in a state of emergency. For it would be an amount of 500 million. So right now he kind of has some limitations, and that was really seen during the pandemic. So this would create some flexibility for him to be able to access funds during state of emergency. So that bill was sent to him for signature yesterday evening, and do expect that he will be signing that. We've talked previously about legislation in the House and Senate that would allow local governments to restrict smoking on public beaches and in public parks. That bill has had struggles in the past, but it's moving very smoothly this session. It has bipartisan support in both chambers. It now just has one committee left to go in both the House and the Senate. In the past, I do know that PIP and repeal of the PIP program when it comes to our motor vehicle insurance has been a big priority of the chamber, of Amplify Clearwater, given the impact that it has on our business community and those who operate, fleets or other transportation services. As you all might recall, the governor did veto the PIP repeal last year. He was concerned it was going to raise rates. There are bills in both the House and the Senate again this session. They have some tweaks to them. They don't include significant tort reform like was included last year. That bill did move through the House this week. It has one committee left to go in the House and two committees left in the Senate. It doesn't seem to have quite as much traction as it did last year. It was a big priority of the Senate last year. And the governor has not quite weighed in on if the versions that have been introduced this year would be something more palatable to him. So more to come on that. We still have a long way to go left in session. So we'll kind of see what happens with both of those bills. Bills to address retail theft are continuing to move in both chambers. It moved through its first House committee this past week. It's scheduled for the Senate floor next week. And those bills are to address retail theft that occur within a 30-day period. So those that are kind of jumping around from store to store, stealing more than 10 items of merchandise, regardless of the value within that short period. So it changes and increases the penalties for that type of retail theft. And again, it does have some traction this year, again, moving through its first House committee and ready for the full vote in the Senate. We're always watching out for legislation that's going to impact our tourist development dollars. We know how important those are to the Amplify Clearwater community. The House does have a bill. It hasn't moved in the Senate quite yet, but it moved in the House for the first time this week. It's very, very limited. It only impacts a handful of counties up in the Panhandle, but something that we're, really watching because we don't want to create too much of a precedence for changes in other counties. This bill would allow counties that are adjacent to the Gulf of Mexico or Atlantic Ocean and that are fiscally constrained. So that really narrows it down to be able to use 10% of their tourist development tax revenue to reimburse expenses for public safety services. So that would go towards their law enforcement. Like I said, it's very narrowly tailored. It really only impacts, I believe it's 7 counties, but something that we're watching again, because we don't want it to be expanded to include Pinellas County, of course. And we also, want to make sure it's not setting a precedence that could be expanded at all. The business community was very engaged in a bill yesterday yesterday morning that moved in the House for the first time. It is a priority of the House Speaker. This is a bill concerning consumer data privacy. It was introduced last session. It ended up dying because of some concerns, particularly by Senate leadership. This bill would create some restrictions on how businesses sell and utilize the data that they collect from consumers. It would also create a private right of action for consumers to be able to sue those businesses. It's something that I would say the business community right across the board has a lot of concerns about, because it's something that only a couple of other states have done. There's a lot of issues about how they're going to monitor the uses of the data within Florida when there are different laws in other states. So a lot of concern from the business community. It did pass unanimously out of its first committee in the House yesterday. There seems to be a lot of bipartisan support, a lot of concern for constituents and how their data is being utilized. Again, it hasn't moved in the Senate quite yet. So definitely keeping an eye on it. I do know that, like I said, it's a big concern for the business community. Relating to education, there was a lot of debate this past week in the House budget proposal related to education funding. They have included within their budget some language that would take funding away from school districts that mandated masks. So I believe there were 7 large school districts within the state that did that, even after the governor weighed in and restricted their ability to do so. I'm not quite sure that proposal is gonna stick. It's not included within the Senate budget, but of course, definitely keeping an eye on it and the debate. I think that's something that'll get resolved over budget conference. Finally, we're still in conversations related to redistricting, even though the House and Senate maps have both been passed. The latest little scuttle kind of going on this past week is actually related to the Pinellas County Commission seats. Some language was put into a House conforming bill this past week that would actually only apply to Pinellas County, and it would require all of our commission seats to be up for re-election in 2022. Right now, several of their seats would not be up for re-election. Unfortunately, a bit of press came around that. Of course, they would, impact Karen Seal's seat. It would impact Charlie Justice, Janet Long's seats, all who just ran for re-election in 2020. That language is not in the Senate bill. There's no companion to that in the Senate right now, but definitely something very interesting that could have some impacts, particularly if there is going to be any sort of a red wave coming up here. It could impact some of our commissioners in 2022. So again, something we're keeping an eye on, a little bit of scuttle kind of going on about that this past week. But I think that's all from this week. We'll have, like I said, we'll have House and Senate budgets passed off the floor next week, and then a lot of budget conference just negotiations going on from there. But glad to touch on anything I might have missed or answer any questions you guys might have.
Well, another wonderful update, Anita. Thank you so much. Thank you to you and your team for representing our needs in Tallahassee. We're really, really grateful for those of you that had a chance to travel with us to Tallahassee and just to get to see the rapport between Anita and our elected officials, and just her entire team knows that they're making us very, very proud there. So we want to thank you for what you're doing and for just keeping us in the loop and what's going on. A lot of exciting progress, definitely a different tone than we've seen in the past. Really more of a thank you tour, because it's really nice that we've got so many representing us at the Capitol that align with the values and needs of our business community. So that's really exciting. I'd like to ask everyone to mark their calendars for Wednesday, March 23rd. We'll be having our post-legislative wrap-up breakfast where we'll have an opportunity to speak with our delegates about what happened during session and kind of what's ahead, and most importantly, how we, the business community, can help them do their jobs on our behalf. So I just want to take another moment to thank you, Anita, for your time this morning, to thank our sponsors, to the City of Clearwater, Clearwater Gas System, Duke Energy, Hillward Henderson, Morton Plant Hospital, and the Baker Health System, and Charter Spectrum Communications for your support of our legislative agenda and priorities on behalf of the Clearwater business community. So that will be all for now, and we will see all of you next week at the same time.